I did it again. Oh well, I'll get it eventually. Hey fam, what's up, y'all? Hopefully the camera will stay. What's up? What's up? What's up? Take a couple minutes. Y'all look, hair all over the place. All over the place. Blessings, blessings, blessings. I hope everyone is doing well. Ooh, y'all, it's hot. Hey y'all, what's up? It's hot, y'all. I'll be right back. Give me a second. Oh my goodness. Oh, all right, fam. We're good now. My bad, y'all. Hey, what's up, fam? Let me turn my brightness up. Hey, everybody. Welcome on in. I'm Ami. This is the Amiverse, y'all. Look, I'm discombobulated. I'm doing good. How are you doing? Welcome in, Ghostface. How you doing? Welcome in, everybody. What's up, y'all? What's up? Get on in here. Let's go ahead and get started. I've kept y'all waiting too long already. Okay, 2 days and 15 minutes to be exact. 20 minutes. All right, you guys. So I hope y'all had a good holiday. We're rolling into the new year. Anywho, I am here with a book, y'all. Oh my God. So I did read a few pages, but I'm going to go back to the beginning. I've literally only read 5 pages, so I'm not deep into the book. Um, I'm just really going to focus on reading, and then, if we end up liking it, let me know down below. And maybe the next video we will do more of talking about it, or maybe we'll just talk about it after we're done. Okay. I'm glad you're doing good, MJ. Welcome in, brother. Good to see you. Like I said, y'all, let's go ahead and get started. This is Touched by Walter Mosley. Okay. Um, Make sure that you all are respectful and nice in the comments. Okay. I have my comment section set up for kindness. So if you type something and you don't see it, it's probably because it was not kind. Hey Peyton, hey Sawyer, hey everybody, welcome on in. If this is your first time here, my name is Ami. We do a lot of spiritual stuff here on this channel, and today we are getting into a supernatural, highly spiritual book. This is one of a couple books we've tried to read over here, and the books before just really didn't align, but I think this one is going to be good. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. This is Touched by Walter Mosley. Okay. So, what's this little part called, y'all? The excerpt or whatever? We're going to read it. Um, Intergalactic visions, deadly threats, and explosive standoffs between mostly good and completely evil converge in a dystopian fantasy that could only be conceived by the inimitable Walter Mosley, one of the country's most beloved and acclaimed writers. Martin just wakes up one morning after what feels like it might actually be a centuries long sleep with two new innate pieces of knowledge. Humanity is a virus destined to destroy all existence, and he is the cure. Martin begins slipping into an alternate consciousness with new physical strengths to violently defend his family, the only Black family in their neighborhood in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles, against pure evil. Think Octavia Butler meets Jeff Vandermeer meets Jordan Peele. Now, I only know who two of those people are. Anyway, expansive and innovative, sexy and satirical, touched brilliantly images the ways in which human life and technological innovation threatens existence itself. Let's get into it. I read that before. I'm not going to spoil though. Please don't spoil. Please don't spoil. Okay. I awoke on a Saturday morning with the plan fully formed, but fading in my mind. Nothing else had changed. It was as if I had gone to sleep years before, contemplating a tricky conundrum, and remained in that doze until the knotty question had been completely disentangled, at least mentally so, at least for a while. But when I awoke, it was merely the next morning, as if time had folded back on itself, depositing me where I was before. Tessa was in bed next to me, sound asleep. Her hair was wrapped in violet nylon netting. She'd sleep for more. She, she'd sleep for 2 more hours. Brown would certainly be asleep in his room. In sorry, y'all, my bad. I'm gonna take that one out. Brown would certainly be asleep in his room, and Celestine, would certainly be asleep in his room, and Celestine, which everyone called Seal, would probably be sitting in her bed reading a library book. I sat up and took a deep breath. That felt like my first inhalation in a very long time. Can you guys hear me well? Cells began to fire in my body. That's the only way I can describe it. It was as if my psych it was as if my psychology, never seen that word before, had also undergone some kind of transformation. I could feel my organs and glands pumping out chemicals, alerting tissue and even bone. There had been an azure plain where beings, not human, had poked and butted me, fondled and fucked me in ways that made no sense in the earthly realm. Okay. I was there and others were too. Other people, other humans, being prepared for something, for some things. It occurred to me that we were not all in accordance. Our plans were different and sometimes even at odds. There were 107 assigned to the Great Change, but our tasks often seemed to contradict one another. 107 humans, conditioned and trained to prepare for the transition. But there were other creatures too, other Earth-like forms that were there to complete us. Or maybe there maybe we're there to complete them. Even more accurately, to complete a circuit, a turning, a revolution. It was only on that Saturday morning with Tessa sleeping next to me and that sun slanting in the seam of our heavy curtains that I understood the plan in its totality. And even then, while I was rousing from my centuries-long sleep, the lessons I had learned were receding into the shelves and cubby holes of my unconscious mind. I can remember only some of it now. After the first skirmish in an intergalactic invasion, scrimmage, there was a place that gave the impression of many shades of blue, but I can't say if my eyes were working. I was aware of different beings from a vast range of planes and realities. They spoke to me, but in ways that transformed rather than informed me. They were like a Congress that met only once, decided on the fates of the world, and then disbanded with their words. Their enunciations had been received and digested. My world, they said, was wrong. It, the planet itself, had spawned a disease of which I was a part. This contagion had begun to multiply, and it had to be rendered impotent by any means necessary. I was to be an antibody in the irid- I was to be an antibody in the eradication of this rampant syndrome. I was the cure, or more precisely, a cure. And there were others who were being modified as I was, to rid Earth of the danger of the genetic disorder of humankind. 107 women and men refashioned to save the universe from the biology and the resultant technology of evil. There were 107 different plans, some radically diverse. This book is good. As I climbed out of the bed, the memories began to retreat. I knew that everything was different, but I could no longer name the various other treatments, 106 human beings, our agreements, and our therapeutic conflicts. Throwing open the drapes, I forgot these serious issues and grinned broadly at the flood of sunlight. I slid open the glass door to our second floor deck and walked outside, feeling that I was entering the world, committing to a battle like any foot soldier, giving his orders, obeying because they were conditioning, and my duty. Mr. Snyder's oak tree swayed in the morning breeze. There was a smell of fuel in the air and of food cooking. Mama, look, a child shouted, but for me, at that moment, it was just one of the myriad sensations of this old/new world. I had been a petty human when I had fallen asleep 1,000 years ago, but now it was something else. 107 ways to change the world, and know two of them in exact coordinates or accordance. How could this end well? Beyond the chill on my skin and the chemicals in the air, I could feel the vibration of souls all around, errant and leaky, confused and starving, the souls of insects and trees, humans and other mammals, all drawn to this impossible hope of unity. This notion of harmony arrested my worries. I had been in a place where there had been an agreement amongst differences, something beyond love and understanding. I closed my eyes and imagined this pristine moment as if it maybe was a gaudy rainbow colored bard sailing off, leaving only the hope of something that had always been an impossible dream. Standing out in that early morning, I knew it was my job to recall that amazing notion and to make everyone in the world aware. I don't know how long I stood like that, with that notion of the absolute fading from my mind, but at that time, exhilarating my heart. Marty, she said. I turned to see my wife of a millennium ago. She was dark brown in a blue and green kimono, beautiful, almost forgotten. It seemed impossible that she stood there. What are you doing? She asked. Today? I inquired. Did she know what my mission was? Was she one of the crusaders? I realized then that I had never had a physical impression of my fellow missionaries. Standing out here naked, she said, and look at your thing. I was naked and had become aroused sexually when I saw Tessa. The wind and the sun felt good on my skin. The air in my lungs was rich and lush. There's a change coming, I said. There was an odd lilt to my words, an ancient developed during the centuries away. What? I took a step towards her and reached out to take her by the wrist. Tessa was afraid, but she was also worried. While pulling her wrist away, she moved her shoulder towards me. It was a language older than humanity coming from the poetry of the genetic soul. Hold it right there, a man shouted. If I had been back for just a few more days, maybe just a few more hours, I would have been able to decipher the threat in those words. But my body had not finished with this internal makeover, and the old world was new to me again. Alien. God is not a being, I said to myself. It isn't. Okay, so let me kind of explain. The way I'm interpreting this, y'all, is like he's slipping in and out of consciousness and like going back to the realm that he came from. So I don't think that there was an actual man in their house yelling at him. He's slipping back into another world. Just to kind of give a little, it confused me for a second, but yeah. um, Let me take a sip, y'all. Ironically, my throat's scratchy the day I want to read, but we're here. I'm not postponing this again. All right, I'm gonna go back just a little bit. God is not a being, I said to my wife. It is an ever reoccurring, never the same meeting of entities that come together, not unlike the myth of the primal Adam. What? She asked while looking over the deck at something on the lawn below. I said, don't move, came the voice again. Tessa was looking at the origin of the command. Oh, I guess there is a man outside, y'all. Look. Oh, she's on the balcony. Okay. Without letting her go, I turned my head in that direction. There were two people in similar garments, a man and a woman, with weapons held high, pointed at me. Well, I be damned. I thought this man was slipping in and out from the other realm because of the details that he said prior, but there's actually a person out. Okay, so this is getting interesting. Okay. There were two people in similar garments, a man and a woman, with weapons held high, pointed at me. I stared at them, trying to make the proper associations, straining to understand what these two humans had to do with eternity. While the woman kept a bead on me, the man with great dexterity climbed on top of our picnic table and hopped over the short railing surrounding our deck. He pulled out his gun again. Tessa shouted and pulled away from me. She moved towards the policeman, who was the color of bronze, but short. I don't know why I thought a man, I don't know why I thought a man of that coloring should be larger. Get on your knees, the bronze man said as he pushed Tessa to the side, out of the line of fire. I noticed a woman and a girl child standing in the yard next door. The woman was trying to keep the child from looking. It was then that I realized I still had the erection. On your knees. Was I being arrested for my erection? No, it was more complex than that. I looked up a bit and saw Los Angeles down the hill from our second floor balcony. The view was majestic to my human sense of proportions, and at the same time, quaint, almost minuscule. to the vision that had grown, was growing inside me, while simultaneously hiding the plan from my consciousness. I felt an impact against the side of my head, and gravity took over my natural biological resistance. That, I thought, was one of the keys to the threat of humankind. We, the elements of life, resist the natural flow of things. Aggression was a part of the essence of biological life. This genetic irrationality was inherited from the first viruses that spawned in the warm pools of early Earth. Tessa screamed. "Daddy!" Brown yelled. "Stay back!" the cop hollered. "Are you all right?" the female cop, an Asian woman, shouted. She was talking to my wife. "Daddy!" Seal, which is his daughter, Celestine cried. She went limp, trying to counteract the gyre of the escalating violence, and that I seemed to be causing. Or maybe it was the blow to my head that was slowing my mind. At any rate, darkness engulfed the multitude of thoughts associated with my consciousness, paring them down to a dark cavity below the surface of perception. They shot that man. I awoke for the second time since my reincarnation. I was in a short bed with a soft mattress beneath me, swaddled in straitjacket, swaddled in a straitjacket that was bound to the bed. Hold on, y'all. What just happened? Okay, there we go. But he was just sleepwalking, and the cops attacked him, a woman was saying. He resisted arrest, a man responded. He's going to have to stand trial, at least go before a judge. Fine, the woman relented, but let him go home. We can't. Mr. Just had never Mr. Just had never even been arrested for speeding, the woman said. What is the reasoning behind incarcerating him? It is procedure to arrest the suspect perpetrator concerning any complaint of sexual nature having to do with children. What complaint? He was naked and sexually aroused in front of a 9-year-old girl. He was on the balcony of his home, sleepwalking, in plain sight of a 9-year-old girl. There were chemicals in my veins. I could taste them. Allowed enough time. I could even have given them names on the great list of moments of existence, as detailed by the celestial congress that anointed me the cure. There were others on the list: the answer, the final solution, the gift of laughter, and many more, most of which I have forgotten. I sighed and sat upright. What's going on? Martin just, Martin Just, that's his name. I thought, sorry, y'all, look. Martin Just, a man in a too green suit, asked me. Um, he was what they call a Caucasian, a white man, 30 pounds overweight and suffering from more than just the disease of mortality. Y'all, I know I said I was just gonna read, but we like this is amazing, like how he keeps slipping in and out of this these two different worlds, like the realm that he came from, and then now, but he has memories of his wife, and just the whole situation with the police is crazy. Like, this book is exciting. This is interesting. Um, and this the way that he's describing the Caucasian man, like he's like literally describing these people like he knows what they are. He's super intelligent, but he's describing them like they're literally foreign to him. Like what they call a Caucasian, a white man, like you know what I'm saying? Like just trippy stuff. Anyway, yes. I am placing you under arrest for resisting an officer of the law and for lewd public display. What's your name and rank? I asked. This question irked the middle aged cop. Detective Thomas O'Halloran, whatever the fuck. He said, Benson? Two uninformed policemen, one obviously named Benson, came into the room. Get him dressed, down to the precinct, and booked, Detective O'Halloran declared. This isn't right, the woman speaker said. She was maybe 30 in a bright red dress designed for a party and not a legal debate. Her heavy features kept her from classic her heavy features kept her from classically beautiful, but she was magnetic and there was a power, animalistic, like force pulsing inside of her. Take it up with the judge in the morning, Miss Claiborne. This man does not deserve to be thrown in jail, this woman called Miss Claiborne protested. Where are Tessa and the kids? I asked. The cop and lawyer turned their heads towards me. It's late, the woman told me. Visiting hours are over, and you've been sequestered at any rate. What's your name? I asked the woman while the policeman worked on untying my restraints. Lena, Lena Claiborne, she said. I'm your lawyer. I broke the law? This idea struck a chord of fear in my core. I had nothing to do with the pretty human I had nothing to do with petty human laws or morals. It was the possibility that I might fail in my duty that brought on mortal dread. You didn't do anything wrong, Mr. Just, the lawyer said. This is simply a misunderstanding that had gotten out of hand. Put these on, one of the ununiformed policemen ordered. He was holding out a pale green hospital outfit, loose pants, and a jacket-like shirt with mid-forearm sleeves. I reached for the clothing and noticed how dark my skin was compared to that of other people in the room. I was reminded then that I was a black man. This was once a very important detail of my life, and ordinarily so. My coloring defined a place among others that was varied and inconsistent, but rarely a benefit. Race had made me at once different and part of an imagined whole. You might want to leave while the man gets dressed. Oh, O'Haron. I'm gonna just say O'Haron. His name is weird to say. Said the female lawyer. I'm staying with my client as long as possible. I hustled on my pants and pulled on the cotton shirt. She senses something. She knows this is fucked up. That's why she's like, no, I'm staying with my client. Kudos to you, girl. Kudos to you. Where's your shoes? The second uniform asked. I don't know, I said. Standing in the garish whiteness of the fluorescent lit hospital room, I was trying to maintain balance. My body was still changing while the images in my mind were dissipating. I woke up hours before, in my own bed, certain in my knowledge of God, but this certainty was slowly devolving into a kind of disorganized belief system. I was under arrest for having an erection, and I was a black man, whatever that was supposed to mean. Under the bed, O'Haron said to me, there was a pair of green paper slippers on the floor. I stepped into them. Paper shoes? My lawyer said. If you excuse me, Miss Claiborne, the detective replied, I will be taking my prisoner into custody. In handcuffs, I was put behind a cage wall in the back seat of a police car. I sat there, distracted by complexity of my situation. I had been sent, or maybe even created, to change the world by my being. My body chemistry and the ideas that sailed across the mirror of my mind had been recrafted to save existence in all of its interactions from a world tainted by the scum that the living gene produced. I was not, however, a destroyer. My job was to rehabilitate, to repair the juncture between pure being and transitionary life. Transitory life. I had no reason to be arrested and treated like an enemy, even if I was an enemy of sorts. We got a real winner for you here, Mackenzie, the cop whose name was Benny said. Oh, uttered the big man behind the high desk. He looked down on me with diseased gray eyes. Yeah, this guy here decided to show his big black hard on to a 9-year-old white girl. Huh? The bulbous admissions cop grunted. He was looking at me closely. This attention, more than anything so far, brought me back into the life that had seemed so far in the past. Yeah, Benny said. And his lawyer, O'Haran, sign off or got to sign off on isolation. Really? The man named Mackenzie speculated. Too bad we're having so much overcrowding. Must be the full moon. But I'll try and work something out. There was a sinister inflection to the admissions cop's tone. I picked up on that too. I was dragged off and put into a small cell behind an iron door and left there to sit on a thin mattress laid upon a shelf that jutted from the wall. The lighting was dim, but I didn't mind that. I hoped that Tessa and the kids were okay. I wondered if I would be allowed to accomplish some part of my mission. There were insects in the walls. I could feel them scuttling. There was suffering in the general vicinity. I sensed men and some women, many in almost catatonic trauma, waiting for something to come. I was that something. I knew it. There was an aluminum toilet in a sink, the size of a soup bowl, nestled in the corner of the narrow cell. I urinated and drank the spigot. The door came open. That was probably for some type of protection. Um, in the spiritual community, your own fecal matter and pee is like, if you don't know, now you know. It's a protection. Anyway, little food for thought. The door came open a few minutes later, and a huge man was ushered in by three baton wearing guards. The man was taller than I by at least 4 inches, making him somewhere around 6'4", and he outweighed me by 60 pounds or more. He wore only jeans and laceless leather shoes with no socks. His bare torso had dozens of tattoos scrawled across it, crosses and naked women, obscure script, and one big red swastika. Swastika. He was bald and heavy with muscle. Ooh, child. Get off the cot, nigger, he said after we were left alone. That's mine. I didn't consider the request. I just did what he said. I moved towards the door and sat in the corner of the floor while he thumped his heavy bulk down on the mattress. The man smelled strong of sweat. I found the odor calming and somewhat transportive. I closed my eyes and thought about being human, about living and sweating and straining against the inevitable. I was a hopeless cause. All living things were. We lived for no reason, but were passionate about our reproduction and survival. We tried so hard and offered almost nothing to existence. This impossible task seemed somehow hopeful. There's soap in the sink. He was just staring at me. I realized that he was trying to intimidate me. He was like Mackenzie at the admissions desk. He hated me for a set of reasons laid out by a pointless history. I don't know, I said. You better hope so, he told me. 'Cause if not, your asshole is gonna bleed bad. What? Come over here and get down on your knees. I stood up and then he did too. I said, on your knees. I understood what was happening. The menace of the tattooed man. The menace of the tattooed man. But my mind was in too many places to perceive him as a sole threat I should have been concentrating on. He was just an aspect of the disease for which I was here to cure. Did you hear me? The man asked. I didn't answer, nor did I lower to my knees. I know that's right. I can't say for sure why I didn't obey. It seemed as if there was no alternative, but I just stood there, moving faster than I would have suspected possible. He grabbed me with both hands around my throat, choking me hard. He pulled my face to his. I could smell the rank breath of mortality. Suck dick or die, he whispered. I felt my eyes bulging and the panic of suffocation firing at the back of my brain. But emotionally, I was distant. Even as consciousness fled, I was amazed by the smell of humanity. When I woke the third time since my return to this plane, I was once again in a hospital room, once again restrained in a straitjacket. A man and a woman, both clad in white, were looking down on me. He was a white man and she brown skinned. You're awake? The man asked. My hands ached. Yes, I said. What happened? You don't remember? I was in a jail cell. Do you remember what happened there? The woman asked. They brought in this big, sweaty guy. He liked me and I didn't. The man and the woman looked at each other, sharing a thought that I was not privy to. Excuse me, the man said. I'm supposed to call the police when you regain consciousness. They may have gone to report my awakening to the police. I don't know. But for a very long time, I was left alone in a white room. There were no windows and few sounds. I was losing the direct knowledge of my millennium of training and conditioning. All I was left with was a sense of faith that I had been amongst the chosen. My hands hurt, but I couldn't see them because my arms were bound tightly to my sides. Ooh, excuse me, y'all. The restraints didn't bother me. For almost my entire time away, I was only a flicker of consciousness with no bodily awareness. I was at the superior I was at the superior beings. There's a typo here. I'm just gonna I was as the superior beings were, a part of everything. Existence with awareness, but rarely emotive. I urinated in my hospital pants because no one came to relieve me. After many hours, four brawny orderlies came. I was cursed for my bodily functions, then unbound, thrown under a cold shower, dressed in hospital whites, and strapped back into restraints. They, all four men, dragged me down a hall to an alleyway where I was thrown into a gray van and driven to another paved aisle. I was handed over to four men in uniforms who led me to a small room where I was made to sit in a square cut metal chair that was soldered to the floor. Where am I? I asked as one of the guards chained my left ankle to the chair. The ugly man, he was light brown and unhappy, stood and said, keep your mouth shut and you won't get hit. For the next hour or so, I wondered if it was my fate to work on the world from a prison cell. Maybe the authorities had figured out my assignment and decided I was to be executed. Why else would they put so many guards on me? I was somewhat tall, but not physically imposing. They must have known somehow that I was a threat to the mindless hegemony of genetic life and its unconscious mechanics. But how could they? I was asleep in my bed next to my wife. I was a simple salesman for an upscale community service company. Nobody from anywhere. When the door came open again, the same four guards unshackled my foot and led me to an elevator. As we descended to the open doors, to, as we as we descended, the doors opened and a woman tried to get in, but the lead guard held up a hand and told her, "Prisoner transport. Take the next car." We exited into a wide hallway crowded with people. From the high windows, I could tell that it was daytime. People stared at me. I suppose I looked dangerous and demented. All around me, human souls shimmered and shivered inside their husk. I wanted to succor them, but could not. The the phalanx of guards pushed me through a set of large double doors. Phalanx. I'm guessing that means a group of guards, like a whole bunch of guards, just using context clues. Pushed through a set of large double doors, and I was ushered into a crowded courtroom. Yep. Marty. It was Tessa. She was standing next to an aisle seat in the gallery, wearing a blue dress and rose colored pearls that I had given her 1,000 years ago. She reached out for me. "Stand back, ma'am," the light colored guard said. In an instant, I hated him. "Your Honor," Lena Claiborne was saying, "it is extremely, um, sorry, it is extremely prejudicial for the district attorney to have my client brought before the court, tusked up like a Thanksgiving turkey. This is a man who has never been arrested or even suspected of a crime before 2 days ago." I had stopped to look at my wife. The guards were pushing me forward. I had to urinate again. The courtroom was filled with spectators. I had never been before a judge, but it seemed that there was more at stake than a simple case of a man standing naked somewhere outside. "Your Honor," a big man in a a a, a suit said, raising his voice above an imagined din. "This man is extremely dangerous. He was originally arrested for sexual deviance involving a child, and now charges of aggravated assault and second-degree murder have been added. He killed a man with his bare hands before the guards could stop him. His last words reminded me of how much my hands hurt." Oh, shit. "My client was arrested for sleepwalking in the nude on his own deck," Lena Claiborne said. "He was thrown in an 8 by 6 foot jail with a man 6 inches taller and 100 pounds heavier than him. This man had already served 7.5 years for manslaughter. He was a member of a radical white brotherhood that had a long and bloody history of documented racial hate crimes. And as far as the guards are concerned, they did not find the body until the next morning. And my client was on the floor, bruised about the neck and unconscious. What was the man's name?" I wondered. "How was he killed? Were my painful hands the evidence?" The judge was a tiny white woman with intense black eyes. She stared at me. "Mr. Just?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said civically. "What do you have to say for yourself?" I woke up, at least I thought I did, from a very deep sleep. I had a long and a convoluted dream, and I guess I'm still processing everything I'd experienced, dreamt. I walked outside, and after a while, my wife came to see what was wrong. Then the police came. I was confused, and this one officer hit me with a pistol, and then they took me to jail. I was locked in a cell, and then this big guy was put in with me. He told me to get on my knees, and when I didn't, he started choking me. The next thing I knew, I was in a straitjacket again. The first time I was knocked out, they put me in restraints too. And now I hear that I'm being charged with murder. It feels like I never woke up, Your Honor. The words I spoke were in a way instinctual. There was a baseline consciousness in my brain that could speak almost without my volitate, sorry, volition. It was like an other persona, a man I once wanted to be, nestled in the folds of my brain, who was there to come out and protect me in the world of degradation and disease. The defendant sounds perfectly normal to me, Mr. Trapaz, the judge said to the man representing the district's office. His hands were covered in the victim's blood, the fat blonde prosecutor said. He was also unconscious, with bruises in the shape of fingers on his throat. My lawyer responded. Untie Mr. Just, the judge decreed. My four keepers worked deftly on the restraints, and in less than a minute I was free. The first thing I noticed was that my knuckles were swollen and bloody. They itched. The second thing that came to me was the silence of the room. Everyone was staring at me. Maybe they were expecting Mr. Hyde to manifest himself and start throwing people around like the rag dolls they were. How are you feeling, Mr. Just? The judge asked. Like, I can breathe. I'm sure. Are you angry? No. There's a lot going on in my mind, but I'm not mad at anybody. Are you guilty of the charges against you? Your Honor, Lena Claiborne protested. Mr. Just, the judge insisted. I did walk out on my deck naked. They say I was sleepwalking. Maybe I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't thinking about being naked either. I wouldn't do that again. As far as killing that man, all I remember is him choking me. Bell, Mr. Trapass, the judge asked, still looking at me. We think Mr. Just should be remanded, at least until we know if he's a threat or not. Martin Just has a full-time job, a worried wife, and two children, Claiborne said. He's a tax-paying homeowner who maintains his innocence. When the police found him, he had the victim's blood on his hands, Judge Jeremy, Fat Trap Ass intoned. These words riveted me. He meant them as some kind of gut-wrenching metaphor. It was his job to keep the bloody murder behind bars. His seemingly straightforward statement was intended to paint a picture of for the court, an image that would convict me then and there at that arraignment. I was aware of the aggressive intentions behind his claim, but that was not what enthralled me. It was the image of blood on the greatest tool that evolution had ever produced, the hand. I had no doubt that my hands had taken a man's life. The pain of my knuckles attested to that. We all had bloody hands. We were all killers, if any of us were. Sorry, yeah, I said that right. We are all guilty. This was the hopeless state of animal life and also of deep ignorance. The idea that there could be a court trying to assign guilt amid a world comprised of the guilty called up on overpowering grief. It was all I could do not to groan out loud. If this man is a danger, he must be kept in custody today, Trap-Ass was saying. He was a young man in spite of his girth. I understand, Judge Jeremy said. No, Tessa cried from behind me. But the judge continued, I cannot be in conscious. Sorry, I cannot be in conscience put I cannot in good conscience, sorry y'all, put Mr. Dress back in jail when there is no compelling evidence against him. As far as I can see, he did not solicit, nor was he aware of, the child's attention, and there was no witness to the fight in the jail cell. I'm here to protect the people. I am also responsible for the rights of the accused. I'm letting Mr. Just go home on his own recognizance. A pre-retrial date will be set by the court. They didn't let me go immediately. I was taken to a locked room where District Attorney Fyodor Trapez and his associate Melanie Blythe explained to me and my lawyer the terms of my release passed down by the court, the police, and the district's attorney office. Trapez took the judge's ruling as an insult, and for this he blamed me. He had a sour look on his face, and his soul reeked of hatred, actual hatred for me. We expect you to be available to court and the police as the investigation continues, Miss Blythe said to the space between me and Lena Claiborne. She, Blythe, was a young black woman in peacock blue. The hue of her dress reminded me of my time in Azure. He will be at his home or his job, Lena said. Glancing at my lawyer, I thought that maybe her nose had been broken at one time. If you run, I will put you in jail until 2050, Trap-Ass warned. Why do you hate me? The real me asked. I say, the real me, because the template of a related but alternate personality had been laid upon my psyche. This false or alternative persona had been formed during my 1,000-year rest in order to protect me from betraying my mission. But the guardian personality wasn't complete. It couldn't be, because I, the real me, had been chosen for natural proclivities. My creators needed me to be free from domination. You are scum, Just. You are a child molester and a murderer, and I'm going to see that you stay in prison until you're old enough to not threaten anyone ever again. Fyodor Trap-Ass's neck bulged out over the collar of his shirt, and he took breaths in sudden gasp. Looking at the pale white skin and jade green eyes, I had a vision of a young man standing over a woman's prostrate form. She was either unconscious or dead. The man, who had no definite features, was looking at his hands. There was blood on his palms. I'm not you, Fyodor, the man inside me said while forcing me to look Trapez in his eyes. He's a psychic and he's clocking their fucking tea. You're like, this is crazy. He had a vision of that. This is crazy. This is a good ass book. This is a good ass book. Hey sis, welcome in. Hola. Hola, welcome. This book is amazing. Okay, so we looked in his eyes, realized, no, nigga, you're the predator, right? Okay, let's get back to it. Um, I'm not you, Fyodor, the man inside me said while forcing me to look Trapez in his eyes. Why you, Fyodor Trapez lunched across the table, throwing a punch as he did. In a trance of lucidity, I stood up and quickly moved 6 feet back towards the wall, allowing the portly man to fall. He landed hard on his gut and was winded by the belly flop. I raised my hands above my head as both women shouted. Three uniformed policemen burst through the door. One of them grabbed my upheld right arm and twisted it behind my back. I had the feeling that I was allowing the cop to manhandle me, so that if I had wanted that if I had wanted, I could have lifted him up over my head and thrown him against his friends. It was it was when I had this exhilarating thought that I began to suspect I had gone insane. I mean, I had no proof that I had left my body overnight and traveled to a place beyond distance and time. I was experiencing or maybe suffering strange perceptions that were no way corroborated by practical knowledge. So, what if I got Trapez angry? He was an angry man before I spoke. Stop, Melanie Blythe shouted. Mr. Trapez just fell over, that's all. The other two policemen were helping the fat DA to his feet. He was gulping for air now. That right? One of the policemen, a tall and skinny youth, asked. Yeah, yeah, Trapez gasped. I leaned over too far and I fell. Guess I need to lose a few pounds. I don't like this. I don't like this, man. I don't like this, man. Mm. Do you want to press charges? Lena asked me. For what? My template replied. Like the man said, he just fell. Okay, I see you, and you're not going to get me locked up. I see what you're doing. I was brought to a room where Tessa was waiting. Where are the kids? Were my first words. Instead of answering, Tessa grabbed me fiercely, clamping her arms around my neck. The violence of this desperate but loving act brought to mind the man I had been charged with killing. He had grabbed me around the neck. He had felt a passion in his breast. I seemed a brief hint of need coming from him just before I lost control and my template took over. Marty, Marty, my wife cried. I put my arms around her. Lena Claiborne was standing there watching us. What was his name? I asked the lawyer while holding my wife. Fyodor Trapaz. No, not the lawyer, the man that they say I killed. I don't remember it. Lon Farthy. Marty, Tessa said, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Let's sit down, honey. There were four plastic chairs set around a green metal table. All three of us sat. Tessa took hold of my hands and held them like a mother wanting to restrain a child. She was looking into my eyes as I had done with Trapez. I remembered that face. When I was awakened in the bed, Tessa was merely an expectation. For centuries, it felt like I had been a bodiless intelligence. At the end of that time, Tessa's name and face were shown to me. Her name and our relationship were um Poseidon. I expected her to be there, but felt no relationship. Not at first. But in the small debriefing room, I began to feel her, to remember how close we had been. What's wrong, Marty? She asked. Why are you looking at me like that? It was the dream, Tess, I said. What dream? I can't explain it. Was it some kind of nightmare? It was it was like leaving my body. I was allowed to see or perceive, but I no longer had a motive. Mr. Just, Lena Claiborne said. Yes. I was still looking into Tessa's soft and worried brown eyes. Your pre-trial begins in 2 weeks. At that time, the court will decide if there is enough evidence to try you. The coroner is examining Farthy's body now. We need to have a talk concerning everything that you remember. Tessa squeezed my hands. They ached under the pressure. Could I just go home and get a good night's sleep? I asked. I'm very disoriented. Are you all right, Mr. Just? The tone of the lawyer's voice caused me to turn to her. I got an impression of her aura. That was the word that occurred to me. Aura. It wasn't a surrounding luminescence, but like a space I could intuit by letting the rest of my senses ease. Claiborne was worried that I was actually insane, that if I went home, I might harm my family. Do you think you should go see a doctor? She was asking me. I don't know everything that happened in that jail cell, counselor. Or maybe my template said, but I do know that I threatened me, but I do know that he threatened me and attacked me. And if I did anything to him, it was because I was defending myself. Let's go home, Marty, Tessa said. She stood up, still holding on to my hands. The lawyer was watching my eyes. She might have been something she might have seen something that worried her, but she shrugged. You're right, you're right. Your wife is right, Mr. Just, the lawyer told me. Go home, get some sleep, and when you wake up, call me at the office. Tessa has all my information. What's happening? Or what happened, Dad? Brown asked. He was 17, with a heavy face and somewhat ethereal eyes, short and squat like my father and mother, and prone to passion, like Tessa. How come you went outside with no clothes on in the first place? Celestine asked. 2 years younger than her brother, she was the darkest skinned of us all, nearly black, with dominant African features. Leave your father alone, Tessa said. He's been through a terrible ordeal and he needs rest. We were eating pepperoni pizza in the den. Tessa had decided to serve the delivery dinner. There were rather there. What the fuck? My brain shut down, y'all. My brain. We were eating pepperoni pizza in the den. Tessa had decided to serve the delivery dinner there rather than in the dining room because it was cozier. For most of the meal, we talked about how the kids were doing in school, but Brown couldn't avoid the subject that was all on our minds. I just want to know what happened at the jail. You didn't really hurt anyone, did you? I had always been a mild mannered man. Raised in the Boston suburb, Newton Highlands, I was at the American middle class. I was of the American middle class with all the urbanity, uh, and so-called sophistication that it came with. I don't remember what happened in there, B, I said. The police said that there was a fight, but I don't remember it. How could you not remember something like that, Dad? My son said, lifting his hands. Brown, Tessa said in her sternest voice. She was from the wrong side of Detroit, and she was the disciplinarian of the family. I had never hit either of my children. I think I was in a state of shock, I said to my son. Tessa flashed her angry look at me. You know, I continued, ignoring her stare. That policeman hit me in the head, and then I was thrown into a jail cell. They were saying that I had done something terrible to a child, and so the police were all mad at me. And that Farthy man was with the red swastika tattoo. Y'all, I'm sorry. My brain is like starting to mix the damn shit around. I'm gonna go back. They were saying that I had done something terrible to a child, and so the police were all mad at me. And that Farthy man with the red swastika tattooed on his chest. Marty, Tessa said, we don't need to talk about it now. You have to get some rest. The kids were both looking at me, a little startled by the dynamic at the table. I couldn't blame them. Their world had been knocked off its foundation. If Tessa had been arrested, it would have been more understandable. She was the wild, hot blooded one. She might go to jail or kill somebody with her bare hands, but not me. I was the one who would try to reason with a burglar or forgive someone who struck me. Your mother's right, I said. We should get a good night's sleep and talk about this after the dust has time to settle. I'm home, and that's all that matters. In the bedroom, I took off my clothes while Tessa changed into her pink nightgown. She was in her mid-30s and used to being with me. She had a shapely figure and her breast stood up under the soft cotton. I could see her nipples even with all that I had been through. I became aroused again. You've got to be kidding me, she said in a tone that will put damper on my man's hard on. Come here. Or more accurately, the template of the man I had always wanted to be said. What? There was an uncertainty, maybe a little excitement in Tessa's tone. I said, come here. I sat down on a little padded bench that stood in front of her makeup table. Tessa took 2 steps towards me and stopped. I don't know what's gotten into you, Marty, but I stood up quickly and she stopped talking. Reaching down, I lifted the hem of her nightgown and then picked her up by her buttocks. When I lowered her when I lowered her, it was onto my full erection. Marty, she cried. It wasn't me. That's what I wanted to tell her. It wasn't me, but the man created from the stuff of my desires, now called upon to protect me. He had seen my wife for a moment, taken over my actions. Slowly, with great strength, he lifted and lowered her with mechanical synchronicity. She gripped my shoulder and moaned in my ear. I continued the motions until she came, and then I did. Then I carried her to the bed and lowered her. Take off that nightgown, I said, standing over her, still erect. Marty, what has gotten into you? Take it off. I fucked my wife for hours. That's the truth. In our many years together, I had been loving and attentive, always attracted to my firecracker wife. I had made love to her many nights. Sometimes we had simply had sex. But that night, I fucked that woman like a drunken sailor on leave in wartime. Baby, you've got to give it a rest, she whispered when I hovered over her again. I need you, Temple said with my vocal cords. I named him that night. So Temple is the man from the other realm. And what did he name the other one? Template is the one from the earth. Okay. Your little girl is sore, she said as an unusual, in an unusually concili- conciliatory tone. She needs some rest. My breath was my breath was coming fast and I was still hard and ready. Please, baby, Tessa said. That was when the transition occurred. Looking at Tessa through Temple's eyes, there was a shift in my awareness, and suddenly I was in control again. There was a feeling of an emotional vacuum, or maybe a lessening of pressure inside my head. Did I hurt you? I asked. You hurt me good, she said with a smile that I had never elicited before. She kissed me and pulled me down next to her. I didn't believe that you could have been in a fight before tonight, Martin. She had she had also she also had a name for my alter ego. Not Marty, but Martin. Not a boy, but a man. Yeah, I said. Maybe that dream drove me insane. Tell me about the dream. Tessa turned to me, her breast resting on my shoulder. I was a different man, and that man became aroused by a woman he had been watching have wild sex with another. No, Martin, she said. I told you I'm worn out. Taking in a deep breath, I closed my eyes, trying to remember my dream while forgetting desire. I I fell asleep like I normally do, imagining that I was transported somehow to Superman's fortress of solitude. That's how you fell asleep? Tessa asked. She put her hand on my chest. If you don't want more sex, you can't touch me like that. I said, oh, she said shyly, pulling her hand away. Sorry. I never told you about my fantasy. No. What's the Fortress of Solitude like? It's located in the North Pole and it is impregnable. I imagine being there, and that makes me feel safe. No one and nothing can get to me there. Sounds like a good place to go on vacation. Usually, I only have to think about being there and I go right to sleep. But the other night, I didn't fall off immediately. I walked around the place, looking at the odd plants in the little city in a 5-gallon glass jar. I had been wandering around for a while, marveling at the amazing collection of alien artifacts, when I became aware that this wasn't my dream. What do you mean, not yours? It's like I started out in my dream and then wandering into another reality, like walking through a door in your own home and coming out in the house next door. Tessa sat up and peered into my eyes, like you left your own mind. I found this long corridor that was formed from a yellow metal, but not gold. I walked for ages. I finally got to a large room where there was this huge pile of glowing blue stones. The pile was as big as a small hill, like one of those kids going climbing going climbing. Sorry, like those kids go climbing on at Griffith Park. And I became aware that the hill was alive. Wow, that's some dream. That was only the beginning. I realized that the heel had an odor or like a vibration. Maybe it was like radiation, ultraviolet rays or something like that. Anyway, I knew that there was intelligence communicating between, I knew that there was an intelligent communication being imparted to me, but I had to learn the language. It took a very, very long time, decades. I sat down before that blue hill and thought for so long that my body died and turned into dust. I didn't tell Tessa that part. I rose. I was a pure spirit, ready to receive my lesson. And what did the mountain say to you? Tessa asked. These words shocked me back to awareness. That I was the cure. I said, the cure? The cure for what? Man is only an early step in a complex viral system. Viral system? What are you talking about? Tessa was an office manager for Clega Toys International, but she trained as a nurse. At one point, she had even considered being a doctor. We were innately a self multi We are innately a self-multiating race, I said. It starts out with tattoos and scarification, pacemakers and false limbs, but that will soon give way to mechanical implants combined with gene splicing techniques. In just 10,000 years, individual human beings will expand their physical selves to the size of moons, even planets. That's what you dreamt about? Biology resists the pull of gravity. I quoted from a sermon given by the pile of a blue rock. We see meaning in this resistance. At first it doesn't seem like anything serious. The universe continues its gyre and nothing is different. But the infection of DNA moves to the level of intercellular domination. The natural flow of things will be thrown off. Science older than a billion trillion um, reiterations of existence will simply cease to be. So just imagine, like, they're in the bed, just got through, and she's asking about this crazy dream, this crazy trip. And every time she's asking like more details about the dream, honey, so that's what they told you, that's what you learned about, that's what they call this. He just like, and we're all celestial beings on this plane and da da da. And she's asking another question, and it is diabolical that we da, da, da. He's disconnected. He's literally living in two different worlds. Like this is some amazing stuff. Like if I was Tessa, I would put him in a car and take him to a facility. I would think that this man is freaking insane. Okay, but let's continue. That's what you dreamt about. Okay, the biology, blah blah blah. The universe continues this Gaia or nothing is different, but the infection of DNA moves to the level of intercellular domination. The natural flow of things will be thrown off. Um, Sentience older than a billion trillion reiterations of existence will simplify to cease to be. And you're the cure? Tessa asked. I don't really remember, I said truthfully. All I know is that there are 107 alternates that, when combined or pitted against each other, represent millions of scenarios that would stop the onset of oblivion. Imagine your boyfriend or girlfriend telling you that, like, huh? My stomach feels funny, Tessa said. The power of the mind is greater than even our greatest thinkers have surmised. I said as if I said as if in answer to her complaint. He's slipping, y'all. We can recreate ourselves to a great degree by thought alone. Could you give me some Brahmo? She said. Temple laid my left hand on her head while placing my right palm on her lower abdomen. She lay back under this pressure. Your hands are hot, Tessa whispered. That feels good, real good. She passed out soon after. I sat there looking at her through another man's eyes. It was an odd experience. At that point in our development, Temple and I were unable to communicate directly. He had his job, and I had mine. It was possible, even likely, that I had an um, schizophrenic breakdown during my long dream. Yeah, because he definitely got split. Yeah, there's two people. There, a being took over his body. That's what happened. Though. A being hijacked him in the astral plane. That is what happened. That's what we're reading about. Okay. Temple was a made-up persona who had a lusty appetite and hot hands. Tessa writhed under my touch, responding to some internal chemistry. I sat there next to her, between this world and a place that probably did not exist. Your mother has a fever, I said to Seal at the breakfast table just after 6:30 the next morning. Probably all the excitement. You need to stay home with your daddy, okay? She said, looking up from her book. No, baby, just look in on her and make sure that she takes some aspirin. Are you okay, daddy? I took a deep breath and then exhaled before saying, you know, I think I'm all right. Everything that happens feels like a dream. Wasn't it a dream that started all of this? What are you reading? 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Is it good? I don't really get it, but it's fun. I went to the room I use as a home office and searched on the internet for information on myself and the crimes I had committed. 7 articles, 62 blogs, and 4 video news reports were immediately available. A lot of the information was erroneous or mere suspicion, but there were some interesting ideas. An online TV news outlet quoted an anonymous police source as saying that Lon Farthy had been bludgeoned to death, that the habitual criminal had taken a terrible beating. If this account was true, I thought then it had to be someone else who fought with Farthy. Physically, he was superior and obviously an abler fighter than I. I didn't have the strength or the nature to inflict such damage. You know, I just had a random thought, y'all. It's the entity from the other realm that takes over his body in these like stressful moments or like these crazy moments. And that's why he doesn't remember because technically it's not the template, it's the entity that's doing that. And maybe he's wiping his mind that way he doesn't forget the mission because maybe that trauma would make him forget the mission. Like when we go through traumatic experiences here in this realm, how it deters us subconsciously from our mission that we were here to do in the first place. Clock that motherfucking T. Okay, y'all, let's keep. If this account was true, I thought, then it had to be someone else who fought with Farthy. Physically, he was my superior and obviously an abler fighter than I. I didn't have that strength or the nature to inflict such damage. That's when I thought of Temple. I didn't have the strength or inclination to lift my wife up and down like I was some kind of mindless oil derrick. I went to the front door to retrieve the newspaper. My crimes had made the lower left hand corner of the front page of the Times. Innocent manslaughter cellmate, the caption read. The article had my name and address, the details of the address with statements from the arresting officers, and an account of Lon Farthy's arrest and convictions. Hold on, family. I need a I need some water. I need some water. And it's gonna be sparkling water. Thank you for your patience. Y'all just give me one moment. I need to. My mouth is getting dry. All right, let's get back to it. I read the piece 6 times and then returned to my den to call Lena Claiborne. Just a moment and I'll connect you, a young man told me. There was a short span of profound silence and then, Lena speaking. You're in, I said, somewhat surprised. Lawyers get paid by the pound, she replied. Can you come in an hour, Mr. Just? Yes, I'll be there. Celestine was sitting next to her mother, reading her book of magic realism. Tessa was asleep, but looked to be on the verge of consciousness. She was restless even while at rest. You better get ready to go, honey, I said to my daughter. Can I wait to see if she wakes up, Daddy? Brown was coming down the hall towards me. He was wearing black jeans and a dark red t shirt that had the words smash cut printed in jagged letters across the chest in electric yellow. Want to give me a ride to school, Dad? Sure, I replied to both my children. After dropping Brown off at the entrance of Hollywood High, I drove downtown to a white stone office building on Grand. There, on the 7th floor, were the offices of Claiborne, Pettigrew, and Gray. The skinny young black man at the front desk knew me by sight. Somehow, the people at the Times had found a photo of me at an office function, probably from an online site. He led me down a hall lined with bookshelves, fouled with law books and file folders, finally coming to a closed cream-colored door. He knocked. Come in. The slender clerk pushed the door open, bidding me, sorry, biting me enter with the same gesture. I walked into the sun-flooded room, surprised by the airness and light. I guess I looked impressed by Lena's digs because she said, I get the morning sun. It makes me want to come to work early. How are you managing? I feel like the best known name in LA yesterday. It seemed like even my life didn't know my name. Sit down, Mr. Just. Claiborne's broad wooden desk was painted clamshell pink, while the two wooden chairs before it looked very much like kitchen chairs, were a carefree turquoise. What are we going to do? I asked my lawyer upon sitting. So you want me to represent you? I thought we already settled that question. Your wife retained me, Mr. Jest. I just need to know that you accept her choice. Have you represented criminal cases before? That's all I do. Tessa knew me. because I represented an old boyfriend of hers, Truth Billings. The mention of truth sparked a question in my head. And what can you say about my problem? I asked, pushing the speculation down. There's not much there to convict you on either charge. You were naked in public view. I suddenly had the almost irresistible urge to bite Miss Claiborne. I was salivating and my jaws were clenched. Had I, in my sleep, excuse me, been transformed, had I, in my sleep, been transformed into the living dead? I closed my eyes and shivered. Is there something wrong, Mr. Jest? Call me Martin, will you, Lena? We shouldn't stand on ceremony. Y'all, let me find out. Let me find out that this entity that is inside of his body is something else because I was already thinking this in the back of my head a couple pages back, like given the industry, the energy and chemistry between him and his lawyer, he gonna fuck that woman. Mark my words, he gonna fuck her, or they gonna kiss, or something's going to happen. He gonna fuck her. She's fucked. Consider her fucked. Okay. I have a feeling. Okay, because this entity that has no morality. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, I have no clue. Like I got food in my mouth. I'm spitting. Look, yeah, I'm just gonna be me. Okay. Anyway, let's get back into the book. I opened my eyes and forced a smile. Slowly, the impulse to devour my attorney ebbed away. As far as the manslaughter charge is concerned, Martin, the bruises on your throat trump the ones on your fist. I sighed. It's all so crazy, I said. Do you remember what happened? Only what I told the judge. I had that crazy dream and woke up disoriented. I'm still not right. I'd like you to go see my doctor. She can check you over for any underlying illness or trauma. Yeah, I said, okay, maybe she'll be able to tell me something helpful. An appointment was made by phone. Dr. Ella Portman would see me as soon as I can make it to her office on Wilshire Boulevard. I stopped in the medical building's parking garage and called my wife. Hello? Or hello, Seal answered. You're still there, honey? I thought you were going to school. Mom needs me to hang around, and I really like this book. Is she up? Mom, young Celeste called, and a moment passed. In that small span of time, I wonder what could I do to escape my feelings of doom? My parents were both dead. My mother had been an only child, and my father an orphan. I had no brothers or sisters, first cousins, uncles or aunts. There were no family for me to call. I didn't want Tessa or the children to have to bear my dread. Marty, Tessa murmured. I had changed from her lover to her husband once more. How are you feeling, baby? You haven't called me that in years. Time has fallen out of kilter, she said. I remember thinking that this was an odd choice of phrase. Where are you? In a parking garage, getting ready to go see a doctor. Is something wrong? The lawyer sent me. How are you feeling? The nausea is gone, but I'm seeing things. That doesn't sound good. Maybe you're the one who should go to see the doctor. No, my wife said in a distant tone. No, I'm not having hallucinations or anything like that. I'm seeing things that are very ordinary as if for the first time. I picked up the old thimble that came down from my great great grandmother, Naurin. My mom told me that she used to be a seamstress on the pinewood plantation in Hickton, Mississippi, over 100 years ago. I studied the little finger cap for quarter of an hour. I saw the details in the way that finger pad was roughened to work against the needle's point. There's an enamel drawing of a white man in a top hat where the thumbnail fits. He's holding up a piece of cloth. I never noticed that before. What's wrong, baby? Was that Was that you with me last night? Tessa asked. Of course it was me. You saw me, didn't you? Yes, but you acted like another man. I called you Martin. I never call you Martin. I have to go see this doctor, Tessa. Are you going to be all right? I'm fine. I'm just keep it still around in case I get stuck looking at something. Stuck? Go on, Marty. I'll see you when you get home. You can put your clothes back on, Mr. Jest, Dr. Ella Portman said. Any bones broke in my hands? No. Deep bruises, though. Were you in a fight? I don't remember. There are no head injuries, she said, doubting my fault memory. Dr. Portman was over 70, tall, and distinguished looking. She had silver hair and was quite thin. Her yellow eyes, behind gold rimmed glasses, were deep set and inquisitive. I was in jail, I said. That was the trauma. What were you arrested for? Haven't you read the paper today? I usually save all the papers up for Sunday and flip through them when I'm on the exercise bike. Most of what you are told is lies. My father said that to me when I was young, and I've always found it to be true. How am I, doctor? Are you a health enthusiast, Mr. Just? No. I got three machines sitting in the garage but never use them. Vegetarian? If pork is eggplant and lobster tail is really a fruit of the sea, you have the skin and eyes of an infant, and your muscle tone is impressive. You never exercise? How's my blood? We won't know anything about your blood for a few days, but from everything else, I can tell you are in excellent health for a man half your age. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I wandered over to Hancock Park and sat down on a bench next to the fenced in tar pits. It was the most ancient place I knew of, and my mood was tending towards the prehistoric. I couldn't at the time remember anything about the plan other than that it was something as old as the ancestors of the atoms that my body was composed of. Beneath me, deep in the soil, lay the bones of woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. This same history resided in my flesh, my bones. My existence was both impossible and eternally reoccurring, related to every event in the wide universe, in particular, though in no way unique. While I sat there watching the fence that kept the casual human or animal from mendering to its doom, I tried to understand my predicament. Was I crazy? Maybe I maybe I had a stroke in the night. Dr. Portman hadn't used any advanced examination tools to scan my brain. My perception could have been off, like a derailed high speed train barreling through primordial woods. It struck me that I had neither gone to work nor called to explain that I'd be out for a few days. The job I had worked at the job I had worked at for 17 years meant nothing to me. 47. That's how old I was. 3.5 months and I'd be 48. Tessa was 10 years younger. She'd been going out with a drug dealer. What? The man named Truth Billings when she and I, met at an upscale coffee shop in Westwood. I was working on a graduate thesis on ancient philosophy, and she asked me why I was reading those boring books. I asked her out. She said that her boyfriend would kill me. Actually, she called him her old man. I took her to Santa Barbara for a 3-day weekend. We walked and talked about school and inherent opportunities connected to education. We didn't have sex. I felt impotent next to her, vitality and beauty, but for some reason this caused her to have affection for me. I took her home on Tuesday, and truth was waiting inside. He was taller and blacker than I, with a vicious scar under his eye. He pointed a pistol at my head and told me to get out. I refused. This was the one act of true bravery in all of my 47 years. Tessa told me to go. Once again, I refused. Truth told me that he would not hesitate to kill me. I told him that I loved Tessa. He said that he was with his woman. He- yeah. She said that he said that she was his woman. I asked him if I asked him if he would die for her. Tessa? He said. Yeah, she replied. You love this nigga here? I don't know for sure, she said, but I think so. She pressed the muzzle against my forehead. Or he did. You know what I learned living in the street? He asked. No. Whatever you can take from me, you can have. He put the gun at the back of his pants under a white gabardine jacket and walked out of Tessa's studio apartment. They have remained friends over the years. He's been to prison, and Tessa tells me is now out of the drug trade. I never seen him. She's told me that he says he wants her back, but she tells him that she's got a family now and that there's no going back from that. Something about her claims seemed to have importance beyond our relationship, at least at that moment in time. There were no going back for me either. Whether I was crazy or something, beyond Superman and his vaunted fortress of solitude, I could not go back to the man I was, living the meaningless of wonderful life of a mortal human, being at the beginning of the 21st century. The front door was open when I got home at 7:17 that evening. Normally that simple fact would have scared me. I've always been a nervous kind of guy. But now an open door was just part of the course. As my father, a man who never golfed in his life, used to say, I'm home. I called upon our most our entering the foyer of our modest two-story home. Here we are, a man said in a forced, coarse falsetto voice. Three men in jeans, t-shirts, and tattooed white flesh met me in the living room. My family was seated on the long tan sofa. Brown's left eye was puffy and blackened, while Seal's jaw had a stoic set to it, with contradictory, frightened eyes. When Tessa's eyes met mine, they lit up, and she gave a mute smile. When Tessa's eyes met mine, okay, sorry, my brain's starting to shut down, y'all. That must mean that the chapter is coming to a close. It's the head nigger, the white man who had greeted me said. His voice was now a moderate tenor, if still a bit coarse. We've been waiting for you to start the party. The other two men were standing, guard behind my family. It was all pathetically apparent. These men were associates of Lon Farthy. Ooh, that officer, y'all. Um, They had read or had someone read to them the address of my home in the irresponsible daily paper. Mhm. I was to be tortured and killed, but not before my wife and daughter were raped and my son slaughtered. It was Temple who made these assumptions. I never would have jumped to consciousness so quickly. I was a thinker, a de facto diplomat. I would have asked what they wanted. Maybe I would have offered them money and my silence. So it's like he's like, I'm a coward. So like he's appreciating the ruthlessness, I guess you could say, of this alter ego slash entity. All Temple did was condemn and salivate. He hunched down like a dog in my breast. All I had to do was relinquish control, and he would show me and my grinning wife what real manhood was. I relaxed my hold on the physical realm, and Temple leapt at the mouthpiece for the game. With his slash my left elbow, he cracked the big fat white man's jaw. Hey! Yelled both of his friends. Then Temple socked the shock leader right in the Adam's apple. His next action was a bit of a surprise. He bit viciously into the side of the man's neck. I was Temple. Temple was leaping over the sofa while the defeated. I'm sorry. He just turned into Mike Tyson. Temple socked the shocked leader right in the Adam's apple. His next action was a bit of a surprise. He bit viciously into the side of the man's neck. I was Temple. Temple was leaping over the sofa while the defeated leader slumped on the floor. My inordinately powerful hands grabbed the closet and shortest man by the shoulders and slammed him against the wall with such force that he was immediately rendered unconscious. I bit into his jaw and let him drop. When I turned to the last attacker, he was both afraid and armed with a vicious looking hunting knife. I quailed at the prospect, but Temple grinned. Get him, honey, Tessa said. Time slowed to a quarter, its natural speed. The last invader moved back, felt the wall behind him, and then came forward at a speed he believed was good enough to accomplish his murderous ends. I waited, I waited, and waited until the point of his blade was maybe 4 inches from my chest. Celestine yelled. Or more correctly, Temple grabbed the big man's wrist, moved to the side while twisting his arm behind him, and then bit deeply into the back of his neck. He yelled and crumbled to the floor, disoriented and weak. I used the orchery pillow from the sofa to wipe the blood from my lips and chin. I was still salivating like a febrile predator. Daddy! Seal shouted, but it was Tessa who ran into my arms. She kissed my bloody mouth and grunted with secondhand satisfaction. The real me, Marty, was appalled by the actions and her response. But Temple was in my hands and arms. It was Temple who returned her vigorous kiss. Brown, Temple said. Yeah, Dad? We're going to lay these guys out. Side by side on the floor here. Move the coffee table over against the wall. The smaller guy was already unconscious, so I moved him first. The other two were woozy, losing consciousness in slow motion. I pushed them down and laid them out on the floor next to each other. Should I call the police? Asked Seal. No. Why not? You'll see. Why don't you go in the kitchen and boil some water, honey? In a trance-like state, Celestine walked out of the living room. Tessa was holding my arm while Brown gazed vacantly, slowly giving in to shock. Get Brown a shot of whiskey, I said to my wife. She grinned and left my side. Have a seat, son. He backed towards the couch and fell rather than properly sitting down. I tried to stop them, he mumbled, but that guy knocked me out. He was pointing at the man I hit in the throat. I scanned the inherent bodies. They were all unconscious. The first man I hit, the one who struck my son, might have been dead. One by one, I ripped open the fronts of their t-shirts. When I finished, Tessa returned with a water glass half filled with amber fluid. This she handed to our son. Drink as much as you can, Brown, I said. And then to my wife, go see about Seal. Tessa smiled at me. She was a new woman, as changed as I was. I realized then, under the dominant worldview of Temple, that my power was to infect, with the edicts of infinity, my own blood. The men I fought were touched by the influence of saliva, but in a more profound way, Tessa was altered by the transmission of blood. I believe that, and when they had sexual relations the night before, like he has transferred whatever energy he picked up from the other side into his wife now. And quiet as kept, I think that she always had this energy, hence her being with a drug dealer who was all in the streets and things before she met him. I went to the men one by one and laid my hand upon their bare chest. My palm felt hot. The third man that I had bitten writhed in agony the touch. Almost instantly, I understood that he was responding to some type of celestial contagion that manifested itself through the alpha personality that was now anchored to my mild and mortal being. Brown sipped at his whiskey, not looking at the men laid out on the floor like dead and dying bodies set out in preparation for mass burial. I waited, last bitten, first risen. The man who had only been infected by my saliva sat up and looked at me. "What happened?" he asked. "You and your friends came in here for retribution," Temple replied. Sitting on his butt, hugging his knees, the man nodded. "But all that's over now," I said, taking control from my newly minted alter ego. Again, the man nodded. "What's your name?" I asked him. "They call me Rat Man," the little guy said, nodding towards his unconscious cronies. "But my name is Mason, Mason Drinkman." Looking into each other's eyes, Mason and I seemed to be transferring unconscious information. While we stared, my wife and daughter came in from the kitchen. Brown was still sipping his whiskey. The smaller man sat up. His name was Sean Gardner, and he was also known as Reaper. He turned to a shivering Celestine and said, "I'm so sorry for what we did and what we were going to do. I don't even understand it now." My daughter nodded and looked away. She would have fled if Tessa didn't hadn't been holding her by her shoulders. "What about Rooster?" Mason, Rat Man, Drinking Man asked. "He's dead," Temple said with my voice box. Brown stood up suddenly, looking down on the corpse. "You want us to take care of it?" Reaper asked. "That won't be necessary," Temple replied. And, as if responding to an implied command, the dead home invader sprang to life, coming to his feet and holding his deeply bruised Adam's apple. What the fuck is going on? He began coughing, fell back onto his knees, and vomited thick black fluid, child. Wild eye, wild eyed, he said to the floor, I was dead. I was dead." Everyone in the room was staring at him, a little stunned. Even Temple was silent. The would be killer, nicknamed Rooster, looked up at the wall and said, "He's out there. He's out there." He was more afraid of an entity outside of himself than his own death and resurrection. For a moment, Temple and I shared the same point of view. There was someone outside. We could feel it too. I moved towards the front of the house. "Daddy!" Celestine protested. "It's okay, Seal," Tessa assured her. "These men are no longer a danger to us." He fucking programmed their psyche. What kind of shit? This is a good ass book. I went out the front door and onto our well manicured lawn. It was dark out. It was dark outside by then. Half a block away, equidistant between two lamp posts, successfully keeping himself to the shadows, stood a man of slender build. He wore a white trench coat and seemed to be bald, or maybe balding. I could feel him watching me, looking for some clue to my nature. Hold on. Lost my spotting. Do, 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 balding. Do, 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 do. Nature. Okay. I could see my resurrected rooster was so disturbed. The man watching my house gave the impression of hollowness, a black hole that attracted and disseminated all life. He was the angel of death. My phone's about to die, y'all. My bad. Let's get our charger. My bad, y'all. Look, we gotta take a quick little, brief little break. Okay. All right. The orientation is locked on the phone, so it won't let me sit it, on its side. So I'm gonna have to ghetto-fy it real quick and try to just set it up somehow. Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. Let's get back into it. All right. Okay. Daddy, Celestine protested. It's okay, Sil, Tessa assured her. These men are no longer a danger to us. I went out the front door and onto our well manicured lawn. It was dark outside by then. Half a block away, equidistant between two lampposts, successfully keeping himself to the shadows, stood a man of slender build. He wore a white trench coat and seemed to be bald or maybe balding. I could feel him watching me, looking for some clue to my nature. I could see my resurrected rooster was so disturbed. The man watching my house gave the impression of hollowness, a black hole that attracted and disseminated all life. He was the angel of death. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel him watching me. In this way, we became intimately aware of each other. I could feel his contempt for my beating heart and living mind. There was a moment of uncertainty. The man in the shadows was considering what action to take. Then Ratman, Reaper, and Rooster came out onto the lawn to join me. What kind of names, y'all? Those are some. What kind of names? Ratman, Reaper, and Rooster. Mm. Where's the motherly love? They exuded uh, prodigious health brought on to Temple's feral bites. That's him, Ratman asked. He must have read about me in the papers too, I said, nodding. I don't think he can take all four of us, Rooster said, but I won't be of much use against him. Yes, Temple agreed, because you were so recently, yeah, because you were so recently dead. He will have some sovereignty over you. I'd resist him, Rooster told the man in my skin. And you got those two and your wife. She's got some power too, that one. Maybe the man down the street could hear our words. He hunched his shoulders and then turned away. In a moment or two, he was gone. The five of us, three white supremacist gangbangers, Temple and I, stood for the long stood for long minutes on the front lawn, stunned by the absence that the Death Master's departure left in his wake. None of us, not even Rooster, who died and was resurrected, had ever been in the presence of anything so absolute, so crushing. Y'all, there's no chapters in this book. It just keep going. Okay. There was no longer any doubt in my mind that I had been altered in the long sleep of transformation. All of us, five men in our four bodies, stood in that terrible moment of grace. We were all out of our depth like shipwrecked sailors afloat on a calm sea rife with sleek, brown tipped sharks, and there was blood in the water. Tessa was in the kitchen making hot chocolate when we came back into the house. Brown was slouched over the couch and still had gone up to her room. The home invaders, with their two torn t shirts and new outlooks, took seats around my son while I went to visit with my wife. I wasn't worried about Brown's safety because we were all on one side, at least for the moment. Tessa watched me while chopping the block of unsweetened chocolate she used for the special treat. Is he gone? She asked. The man outside? The other one, she said. The one in you. Yes, I said, a little surprised by the revelation that Temple was not omnipresent in my consciousness. I'm going to stop right there. We're about halfway through the book. We read 68 pages, okay? We're going to come back and finish out the book cuz yeah, we're halfway through. We are halfway through. What an amazing book. What an amazing read. I appreciate y'all for coming out. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I just want to thank you. If you made it this far, please hit that like button, okay? I will be back in the next day or two and we will finish out this book, okay? Peace and blessings. Y'all keep your head on the swivel. Like I'm gonna say in every video, for the time being, make sure you stock up, okay? Food, essentials, and stock up spiritually as well and emotionally. Um, in a minute.